You're here for the Riding the Emotional Roller Coaster of Chronic Pain webinar. And my name is Tanya Hyde, and I'll be moderating the webinar today. I'm the project manager with the Canadian Institute for the Relief of Pain and Disability, and this webinar is co-sponsored by CIRPD, ourselves, and Pain BC, and is also done in collaboration with the Canadian Pain Coalition. It's also made possible through the support of the Community Gaming Grant Program through the BC government, as well as through donations and memberships. And as I mentioned, my name is Tanya, and I'll be moderating the webinar today and handling the Q&A session. And our presenter today is Dr. Wesley Book. Dr. Book is a registered psychologist who practices in the area of clinical and rehabilitation psychology. In 1997, he co-founded Behavioral Healthcare with an interest in individually tailored cognitive behavioral approaches to chronic conditions that emphasize the home, community facilities, and workplace as rehabilitation clinic. Currently, Dr. Book's focus is on psycholegal assessment and the treatment of complex forms of human suffering, such as chronic pain. He has research interests in pain-related fear and risk factors for clinical distress in caregivers and clergy. So I'm going to hand it over to you verbally, Wes. If you want to just do a pronounced pause before you want me to go ahead and change the slides, that would be perfect. And then I'll just be paying attention.
Okay, so I am not going to do any kind of pronounced pauses to catch my breath. Because that will mean you go to the next slide. So what I need to do is just pause and don't say pronounced pause. Is that right?
That would be correct.
Okay. Hey, you know, thanks to the Canadian Institute for the Relief of Pain and Disability, and also the support of Pain BC and the BC Pain Coalition for the invitation to talk about chronic pain today. It's a subject, I must say, that has captured my attention for my entire career as a psychologist. Thanks also to you, Tanya, for all this last-minute messing around that we had to do because my computer decided not to work properly, and for walking me through the technicalities yesterday when everything went flawlessly. So I appreciate you hosting today, for sure. And to everyone who's listening in, happy Earth Day. I have a secret, and it's a secret about Tanya and myself. And I don't even think Tanya knows this secret, but I'm going to let everyone in on the secret if you all promise not to tell anyone. And that is that Tanya and I own dogs. And up in front of you should be a slide of my dog, Toffee, who is a cockapoo. Now, Toffee, that means he's part Cocker Spaniel and a part poodle. How this works out, actually, since as a psychologist I've needed to assess him many times and try and figure him out, is that when I really want Toffee to do something, he gets all friendly, wags his tail, and acts dumb, kind of like a Cocker Spaniel might. However, when he wants something that I don't want him to have, he gets really, really clever, like a poodle. That's my story, and I have others where those are coming from. I would say that it's a great intervention for roller coaster emotions to have a dog. And that's our topic today, is the roller coaster of chronic pain. I'm not going to explain that a whole lot to you who are listening in, because I think you know all about it in spades. Well, I'm going to now make a pregnant pause and wait for the next slide. Here's the rest of the family, or at least some of them. Dr. Elizabeth Banner is to your left, and Dr. Judah LePage is to your right. And those two clowns in the middle belong to me. I'm the guy on the right who's looking very fetching today. I don't know much about the guy on the left. He seems to be trying to copy how I sit and everything. I don't know, a bit goofy. Anyhow, I am really pleased to have such great team members. And I do want you to know that when you're having roller coaster emotion, it really helps you to be reminded, or to remind yourself of who loves you. I work with lots of people who have roller coaster emotions, many of them because they have pain, and you know all the kind of raw emotional experiences pain can bring you. Well, in her particular case, she had pain and really quite a pronounced driving phobia, driving anxiety, and I managed to get her into my car, which was a major deal, and then I was starting to work with her on actually driving in the car with me as the driver and her as a passenger. And she needed to really touch base with something that meant a lot to her, something that would remind her that all was okay. So I got her to put up a picture of her children on the car dashboard so that she had ready access to that. And it really did, just in a glance, seem to settle her down. These pics of people that we love can have great power. Some family members and some friends can help you experience deep emotion safely, help to sort of get it out. So, for instance, when you're sobbing, and you really would like a hug, and sometimes we don't want a hug, but sometimes we do. Or when you're really, really mad and you want to tell someone about what's making you so mad, and someone that you trust and can be a good stand-up person as you talk about what's going on respectfully to them. So that's really important as well. So family counts, friends who love you, they count. So next. Here's a pic of anger management at behavioral health care. Elizabeth is teaching me all about it. And I must say that humor helps with roller coaster emotions. Here's a fun exercise that is going to sound really goofy, but then so's the picture you're looking at, and particularly that guy who is receiving some kind of blow there. Try getting really, really mad, or remembering when you were really, really mad, and really get into it. And then switch to standing on one leg and flapping your arms like you're a bird. Now, try doing that in a full-length mirror. In fact, try doing that and have someone put it on YouTube. Fun for everyone. But here's the thing. Humor can really, really help with strong emotion, when it's used appropriately, of course. On this next slide, what we're seeing here in British Columbia is that 1 in 5 have chronic pain. That's pain greater than 6 months that a person is experiencing at least several times per week, and the severity is at least moderate to severe. And what I want you to know is that you are not alone if you have pain, even though you may well feel like it. And on the next pick, the problem with pain and the reason that you might feel alone in your pain is that chronic pain disappears you. And emotion can make you feel real. I wonder if you've had an experience of that. If you're experiencing roller coaster emotions, I want to say rejoice, because you're showing signs of life. Strong emotions bring color to the cheeks, get your heart pumping. Emotions help us feel alive. And of course, there can be a downside. So in our next slide, you see this dude hanging on for dear life to his emotional roller coaster as it zooms all over the place. My dad used to say to me, son, he'd say, you can have too much of a good thing. Well, I don't know about you, but there are some things I'd like to have too much of. But you probably can have way too much of good emotion. It can get quite out of hand, and that's the subject of the presentation today. Well, on the next slide are some fun facts about pain science. It certainly has been an evolving field, tons of research, And I think there's been another paradigm shift in the field. Turns out that pain is actually not in your injured part, but in your brain. Pain is an output of your brain that may well come from signaling from an injured body part, for sure. Neuromatrix theory suggests that we process pain like other incoming data that we perceive as threatening. The neuromatrix is not a thing. It's not something if you opened up your head you'd find it, but it's actually a set of brain processes. And our pain system, our neuromatrix, acts like a big super threat system which is designed to protect us. But sometimes the neuromatrix system itself becomes overprotective and then becomes a new treatment focus when pain lingers. Now, in this whole process, emotion is both an input and it's also an output. It's one of many. So if you're threatened, our neuromatrix processes assess what's happening and sends out a protective response, like panic, which is designed to get your attention right away, or pain, same, or anger, to help you fight or run away. All of these are meant to be protective measures. One more slide from pain science. Too much emotion winds up the pain system, winds up that neuromatrix, and we get more pain. We get hypersensitive. So there's a theory called hypersensitivity theory, such that small threats become even bigger. Today's presentation is about winding down roller coaster emotions that wind up the pain system. Now, on the next slide, I'm going to suggest that all this can get quite complicated. I often say to my clients that we are far more complicated and sophisticated than our best theories about us, and I think that's true. But what I'd like to do now is talk practically about emotion and the emotional roller coaster. When it comes to emotion, we can get as complicated as we want. But if you look at the graph to the right of your screen, down at the bottom of all that math, I'd like to bypass all those mathematical complications and get to the point, which I don't know if you can read it, but all that math apparently adds up to peanut butter cookies. So I want to get past the complications, which could keep us here all day talking about the pain science and strong emotions and runaway emotions, and just talk practically today from my own experience, from the literature and what I've learned from my clients who live with pain. And I'm going to be suggesting as I go through my presentation that instead of over-controlling or avoiding our emotions so that we get all wound up, right? Remember, wind up, so that our emotions start yelling at us, that we would do well to learn to appreciate our emotional life, to listen to the little messages that our emotions are trying to deliver, which can be so helpful in our problem-solving activities because they come from areas in our inner life, in our mind, in our deep thinking that might be very helpful, insights, revelations, epiphanies that might really help us. So on the next slide, I show the problem with stuffing emotions. When we have strong emotions, sometimes we're so alarmed, we want to get back into control, so we try and stuff them down. But the little motto there says, don't stuff them down, don't ignore them, they're waiting for you. That's very true. And on the next slide, when we try and stuff them down, we get something silent but deadly, a kind of emotional cancer, like tooth decay that kind of eats away inside of us. And we really can't benefit from what's going on there because we've stuffed the information. On the other hand, the next slide tells us that stuffing can turn out to blow up on us and everything gets very noisy. So on the next slide, I say, how can I get off this roller coaster? Do you identify with either of those two characters in that roller coaster? They are looking mighty perturbed to me. And you might have had this experience yourself, like you're just barely hanging on, and something else is taking you around some sort of track you hadn't planned for yourself. Well, I have to make a confession here, because this next slide is about a poll. And the reason I want a poll is because I want to tell you that all the best things that I've learned about chronic pain, the practical ins and outs of how to approach chronic pain and how to live a life worth living with chronic pain, although that can be exceedingly trying. The best stuff I learned from patients. There you have it. My clients rock, and I would say it wasn't graduate school. And even though I've read some mighty fine books and even some practical books, it's really been my clients who have taught me about chronic pain. So I think it's really important for people that have chronic pain to have a voice and show their wisdom. So I'd like to invite Tanya to conduct a poll about how we get off this roller coaster, and I've asked 3 questions there. So Tanya, over to you.
Actually, we forgot to set up the poll in advance. So I'm not going to do it as a strict poll, but what I'm going to do is have people just type in their answers to those questions in the question box. And then I'll just read through some of the questions, which works great since it's more question-based than like a yes or no. So if some of you want to go ahead and just type in, what have you tried to get off the roller coaster, for what situation, and how is it helpful, all in one sentence or a couple of sentences. Then I'll just read them out loud. I'll read a sampling of them.
And while people are doing that, would you like me to fill in the airtime with something?
Sure.
All right, then. Well, while people are doing that, I want to tell you that in the next slide coming up, I'm going to share with everyone one of my favorite strategies in dealing with overwhelming emotion that actually came up in a session with a client of mine who was living not only with chronic pain, but also with post-traumatic stress disorder. So he just had a lot of stuff going on in his head. He was worrying all the time. He was anticipating things that hadn't come yet. He was getting himself very alarmed about that. We call that sometimes in psychology catastrophizing. He was really so alarmed. He sometimes when he got down would ruminate, which means he was thinking all the time about the past. And interesting enough, it wasn't good things that he was thinking about. It was really heartbreaking stuff and tragic stuff, the effect of what had gone on with his condition to him and how it impacted his family and his children. And he was a guy that basically was on an emotional roller coaster in his head and in his emotions. His thoughts just would not stop, just on and on and on. And we worked out a strategy that was very helpful to him and very much in keeping with the psychology of handling difficult emotions.
Very good. Okay, we do have some responses now, so I'll go ahead and read them. What have you tried? Meditation, visualization, and withdrawal from situation. Mm-hmm. Then there's another one, meditation, nature, and sharing feelings with someone safe.
Oh, that's great, yeah.
So another one, meditation daily while doing exercise for chronic back pain, keeps the pain under control. And there's someone, actually, she's online, said she wanted to hear you talk as she just had you at her workplace where you talked about chronic pain. So.
Oh, I hope that was a good thing for her.
And then others say family and friends help as well as pets. Physical activity, walking or gardening to help calm the mind and body. Someone said they've developed a laughter library to use when they need to lighten their mood or distract themselves from pain.
Oh, I've never heard that. That's really cool. I like that. I'd like to make a few additions to that and have you share that library with me. I'm always up for a good laugh.
And then there's a few people who have said that they've tried medication for helping get off the roller coaster, antidepressants to help even things out.
Yes. Yes.
Relaxation reset when it's stressful at work helps to allow them to reset and not let the emotions get in the way of work.
Wow. Yeah, very good. Keep going. I'm learning. I'm writing all this down.
Positive thinking, listening to my body, and getting emotional support and keeping active.
Yeah, you know, that whole thing about listening to your body and staying active is really important. And I just want to say to that person who mentioned that how much I appreciate that listening bit, because when I was starting off in the field, there was this idea that really your pain didn't have much to tell you that you didn't already know. And since your body was the site of a very unpleasant, continuing, constant experiences that were negative, who wants to listen to their body? But it was actually patients who helped me to know that you can be discerning about your body, and that there might be a lot more going on in your body that's helpful for you to know than pain only, which led me to the implication that we are so much more than our pain. There's a little something just for everyone who's listening in today. You are so much more than your pain. There is more to know about you than your pain. So all of this, once again, from working with people like you folks that are listening in, are giving me all sorts of great ideas.
Great. And then there's a lot of them that are along similar lines. A few who mentioned doing physio and acupuncture has been helpful.
Yeah.
And yoga.
Oh, yeah. Yoga's, you've had Neil Pearson on, and I think I robbed or stole one of his slides for something here. I can't remember. At any rate, I know Neil, and he's done really well in knowledge translation of pain. And he's a physiotherapist and a yoga practitioner, instructor. And there's some good preliminary research coming out on yoga and good things that it does for the brain, like thickening the frontal cortex and stuff like that. So these have all been shown to be helpful to the neuromatrix processes in wind down.
Very good. And then I think I'll just read a couple more, and then you can go ahead on your on the rest.
Yeah,
Someone said doing something that holds my interest and distracts me.
yes.
And related to that, someone else who said reading books that alter my perspective when I'm thinking in a way that's not helpful.
And if I can just barge in here again, the book part is really important to my presentation today for two reasons. One is my last name is Book, and you, Tanya, were trying to pronounce it, but it doesn't sound like it's pronounced book, but it actually means, it's pronounced book in Danish, and it means like reading a book. And so my family tend to be academics, amongst other things. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that my presentation today is going to give you the actual images of workbooks that I use every day in my work with clients with chronic pain, and you're able to get those books yourself. And I took a few of the gems that I found in them to share with everyone today. But you can do the same by getting some workbooks that are helpful, or maybe this listener was talking about books finding that they find enjoyable, like a good novel or something else. Great.
Wonderful. And then just a couple others. People found dancing helpful, and Tai Chi.
Oh yes, Tai Chi. Yeah.
And then, yeah, a lot of the other ones are similar. A lot of breath work and meditation and mindfulness.
Yeah, you get a sense, Tanya, that there is a library of books out there that have wisdom, and they're talking to us now. And much appreciated, everyone. Shall we stop there or keep going?
I think we could probably stop there.
Okay.
And if you're interested, I can also do a download of all of the responses and send them to you if you'd be interested.
I, for one, would. Yeah, absolutely.
Wonderful.
And so we're going to move on. I would just say one of the things I also noticed about these good ideas is that many of them involved movement. Now, that's a really good thing with the recent pain science, which is pointing to different ways you can move that are very helpful in not only creating more function, and so you can do stuff that you would like to do. It's also good for your mood, again, so you can do things like socializing, going places that you'd like to do. But movement is also something that can help the neuromatrix to settle down if it's the right kind of movement. And it's almost like retrain kinds of movements do not need to be responded to with such huge threat from the brain. It's actually going to be okay. So little movements to bigger movements to bigger movements, nudging the tolerances, that's the way to go. But you definitely get the brain's interest in perceiving that movement does not mean you're screwed, or and so therefore it's not necessary for the brain to put out so much out of a sense of threat. So little bit by little bit by little bit, keeping things wound down rather than wound up. Tai Chi is a great example. Love the idea of dancing. Great. And on we go. So here's the one strategy that I learned together with this client of mine who had chronic pain and who had post-traumatic stress disorder. So it goes like this. He actually called all of that thinking that he was doing, all the worrying, the ruminating, all the negative stuff that was going on in his head, he called it spin. And I thought that was really good. And when he said spin, I remember going home that day, and I'm the dude at home who does the laundry, so I was watching the clothes go round and round and round in the spin dryer, and it occurred to me that, yeah, my mind and his mind is kind of like that dryer. Inside is all that activity going round and around and around. Buddhists call it monkey mind. So it's going round and around and around, spinning around. You can get dizzy just looking at it. And it occurred to me that perhaps what I could do is just look at that spin as if it was what was going on in my mind, and then gradually just back up. So I was detaching in a way, backing up, and taking a look at it from increasing distance and see what kind of an experience that had on me. And then I took that idea and put it together with my client's idea of spin. And here's what we came up with. As the spin starts up, he tends to get triggered by various things that remind him of his injury. So when the spin really gets going, he'll say, "Hello, spin." And he might even name an emotion. That's going to sound weird, I know, but then that's me. So he actually says to himself or out loud, "Hello, spin," and he names it. There's power in naming things. Then he says, a little gratitude, "Thanks for showing up." Why does he say that? Thanks for showing up. Well, because this spin is an output from his super threat system, his pain system, that's saying that it's really working on something, it's all upset, and he needs to know something. So he says, thanks for showing up. You're trying to tell me what? And then he'll figure out what it is. You're trying to keep me safe. You're trying to tell me that there's a lot going on in my life and I feel out of control, that sort of thing. So once again, what are we doing? Hello, spin, hello, emotion. Thanks for showing up. You're trying to tell me this is what this emotion's trying to do. Then he says, I'll be okay. I'll help communicate safety to himself. Then if it's really loud in his head, he uses a telescope technique. You know, when you're looking through a telescope, you turn it one way and you get things zooming in, and you turn it the other way, the objects zoom out. Do the same thing with your thoughts. So zoom in, zoom out, and you have the power to do that. So you just zoom out, and you might even see yourself putting the thoughts in a spin dryer and moving back, asking yourself, what's next? So there you have, you're not going to find that anywhere, folks. That's secret out, and glad to share it with you on behalf of my clients. Feel free to use it. It's called Spin, and it really helped this fellow, I must say. What, did it cure him? No. But it really was another tool in his bag of tools that helped. All right. Now, here we have one of the workbooks I use all the time. This one actually has Elizabeth's name on it, so now she knows who has the book. Don't let your emotions run your life. And it's about an approach called dialectical behavior therapy. I must say dialectical behavior therapy is, Marsha Linehan's the pioneer, but it's just filled with great common sense. It's like people got together, you know, around a campfire one day and said, you know, we've got this problem, some sort of emotional problem, and they started coming up with ideas just like we did a few minutes ago. What can you do when you're in that situation? What can you do when your feelings are just running away from you? You're feeling totally out of control. And you folks out there generated a list that's, goodness, near 20 items long. And there's just wisdom out there. And in dialectical behavior therapy in this book and in others, they're just very good at offering really cool ideas that probably come out of their work with clients too. So there's a free plug for the dialectical behavior therapy people. One of their ideas, which I thought is really good, and I use it all the time with panic, is, but you can with pain flare-ups, by the way, or both, self-soothing emergency kit. So in the book, it says you actually have this kit or this pouch or, I don't know, something you can carry stuff in. Lilac or almond body lotion. Well, I'm not so much into that, but some people might find it really helpful. A classical CD, some kind of music that is calming. And what's calming to one may not be calming to another. My son Dan plays me metal music that he says is very calming, so what do I know? A rabbit's foot, never thought of that. Worry stone. I use objects like worry stones or rocks or objects that have special meaning for sure. Incense, using the sense of smell to help calm a person down. The olfactory sense is, I understand, to be the fastest way to the brain. So pretty powerful sensory system. A few chocolates. Now, I definitely like that. And this was great. A tacky tabloid newspaper. I never would have thought of that, but there you have it. I love it. So there you have the self-soothing emergency kit for when you're in roller coaster emotions, and you reach into that kit and you pull out something that's going to be helpful. And you can put all sorts of things in there. If we have time, I get you to make some suggestions, because I'm sure that all of you out there have ideas of your own. So the next slide is from a mindfulness-based stress reduction workbook by Stahl, and it's a really good book. I really like Stahl's work. Basically, from the work of Kabat-Zinn, who has been using, a psychologist who's been using Buddhist principles in his work, really effective chronic conditions. Stahl's work comes out of that, and there's a program called Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction, and I think it's a great program. One of the little tools in there is called STOP. I love this tool. For runaway emotions, for things you just don't feel you have control over occurring inside you, and it's an acronym for S equals stop and get grounded. Now, he didn't mention the get grounded part. That was a freebie for me, but the thing is, you can say stop, you can think stop, you can think of a stop sign, stop, you can actually stamp your foot, stop, but then get grounded, as in sometimes runaway emotions make you feel like you're in a roller coaster taking off, like leaving your body. So feel your feet on the ground and your butt in the chair and your hands by your side or whatever it is. Just get physically grounded and centered. And T is take a breath. I see by the responses today in our little poll that breath work is quite familiar. And I think that's another gift from the mindfulness folk and the influence of Buddhism and Hinduism and several other religious traditions, great reservoirs of wisdom. 0 equals observe. This is a big one for everyone who works in chronic pain. It's from a mindfulness kind of idea, so the mindfulness-based stress reduction. You observe. I like the word get curious about, which I learned in Hakomi, which is a beautiful therapy for all sorts of things. And just being curious, but just curious. Stepping back a bit, detaching a bit, and observing, being curious, being a student. What's going on, right? And then P is once you've done that, settled yourself, proceed. There it is, stop, from a mindfulness-based stress reduction workbook. Hey, what do you think, Tanya?
I'm sorry, what was that?
I was just saying I'm telling people about these books. I should get a commission for telling them. I'm marketing.
That you should.
Next slide is Dialectical Behavior Therapy Skills Workbook. Well, I've already raved about dialectical behavior therapy. And here's an example of one of their distraction. Who doesn't know about distraction? We all use it, right? But they've just cataloged a bunch of stuff you can do to distract yourself when you're having roller coaster emotions, if that's what you need to do. The thing is, you don't have to do just, be a one-trick pony. You can have lots of things that you can do, have available to you, and try them and see what works. Well, here's distract, and they say distract with pleasurable activities, and even give you a long list in this workbook. Distract by paying attention to another person. That's really true. Sometimes that can really work well. So getting your mind off your own stuff and onto somebody else's can give you a break. Have you noticed that when somebody phones you, you can be in the middle of an argument with your child or your loved one or your friend or somebody, and then you pick up the phone and go, hi, how are you doing? And it's like nothing ever happened. You're not really all wound up at all. It's amazing what we can do to actually switch from feeling like we're in a roller coaster to something that feels a bit more like we have some control. Another thing is, and somebody mentioned this today, by leaving, so maybe leaving the situation where things are getting really heated and nothing good is going to come. If it's a loved one, just say to your loved one, hey, I'm just getting way too upset. I need to go and calm myself down so I can talk better with you, and just let them know what you're doing, or else they might pursue you, which is probably what you don't want. You might want to, if you're having a pain flare-up or having just a roller coastery kind of experience, sometimes just changing rooms or changing sitting positions can be a kind of sign or a trigger for a different way of feeling. Distract with tasks and chores. So, yeah, mine would be laundry, and of course I'd be reminding myself how my mind is like the spin dryer. And by counting, there's an old one, right? Counting. So trying to move the center of your brain activity from the limbic system, which is processing with the rest of your brain all sorts of emotions, and more into the frontal cortex, doing something kind of, repetitive, kind of boring, kind of uses, a mathematical exercise, computation, things like that. It can settle emotions down. On to the next one, which is also from this book, and I love it, and I suspect that the people at Dialectical Behavior Therapy lifted this from EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. At any rate, that's where I learned this. Safe place visualization, I think it's very powerful. And basically what you do is, first of all, you get yourself into some safe surroundings. That would be a good place if you're going to be at a safe place inside. You need to be in safe surroundings outside. Do some breath work, a couple of breaths. My favorite thing to do with breath work, and there's lots of different things to do, is actually just to get out of the way of the breath. And I do that by just thinking about soft belly without at all thinking about breath. And your body will usually, if you're not under immediate threat, want to go there. It's a good thing to do. Next is remember a strong memory of safety. A memory of safety, of love, of when you felt content, kind of happier, at least safer. Or maybe you don't have any of those memories from your childhood or other times in your life, so the story of safety from a book or somebody else. And then visualize it using all your senses, right? So you go through each of your senses, your sight, the sounds, the smells, the tastes, etc. You really, really get into it and make it all come vividly alive. And you can also associate it with a cue word, a word that you can use to induce this kind of safe place in a time when you don't have to do the whole protocol. So you might say peace or safety or something, and then some breath work around that. And there you have it. Another very practical thing from the Dialectical Behavior Therapy Skills Workbook, which is very helpful also for pain flare-ups, by the way. Okay, moving on. This is from the Acceptance and Commitment Therapy, or ACT folk. I use them a lot. I really like what they're up to for all sorts of reasons. And one of the things I find that makes them so credible is that their pioneer, Stephen Hayes, had a really bad problem with anxiety, which he told me about, and I think he tells lots of people. And he used his own set of exercises from acceptance and commitment therapy and the principles of that approach to help him, for instance, speak in public, which he could never do. Now he does it all the time. So pretty convincing. He has, in this book anyhow, by Forsyth and Eifert, there's a FEEL exercise, another acronym for Feeling Exercises Enriches Living. What they're trying to get at here is actually allowing yourself to feel something that is going awry, to notice it, to be curious about it, to do an exercise that helps you do that. And like in dialectical behavior therapy, there's lots of little exercises they have that are very creative. Both of those, DBT and ACT, have communities of practitioners that come up with all sorts of great ideas. And that will, of course, enrich living. And as an ACT practitioner, they would say living towards valued goals that you are committing yourself to. Okay, so on the next slide, we have an example for people to get really dizzy because they have problems with panic. You can have pain flare-ups and you can have panic at the same time. A double whammy, I think, which is very, very unpleasant. At any rate, one of the key approaches in psychology to this sort of problem is judiciously to, instead of running away, burying, stuffing, whatever those emotions of panic, which usually doesn't work, they could become more strong than ever, you approach them with the idea that they're not going to kill you. The worst that can happen if you're sitting down is that you'll briefly pass out, but usually not. And then when you're not having a panic attack, just to practice this, they will get you to actually induce a measure of anxiety just to nudge your tolerances. So this word tolerances is coming up a lot. Tolerance building skills. And so you're nudging your tolerances to tolerate anxiety more and more and more. And so they do this in 4 ways: staring at a spot, spinning, sometimes in a chair, head between your legs and you pop up quickly, shaking your head. All sounds pretty weird, but the whole idea is then to use the feel idea of feeling that anxiety with this exercise, observing it, and I'd say distancing yourself from it perhaps, or maybe just noticing, and then until it's finished, calming down, because that's what panic wants to do. Calm down. It's hard on your body to put out all that energy. Just like in a rage, you can't rage forever. And then getting on with something else. Okay, then we're moving on to washing away your panic. I was all set to tell you about this great little exercise from Calming the Rush of Panic, again from Bob Stahl and company. And it's a RAIN exercise, he calls it. R equals recognize, A for acknowledge, I investigate, which is about the being curious, noticing, all of that, and N non-identify, saying, well, this feeling is not me, it's not me, it's being produced in me, but it doesn't speak to the core of me. It is something I'm just going to detach myself a bit from. And in the ACTS, people talk about fusion when you get all wrapped up in something like a finger trap, a Chinese finger trap, as opposed to letting it go. I think it's really important and not identifying with it. That pain is not me. It is just something that my body is doing to warn me about something which may or may not be helpful. Okay. Then the worry trap, another exercise from here that I wanted to do but won't have time for, but it's called LAMP, for label your worry thoughts. So here's this whole thing of worry, you know, when you have pain and you think, oh, that's new, then your mind starts chewing on that, going around and around and around in the spin cycle. Gee, I wonder what that is. That's probably something that, you know, means that my pain is getting worse and I'm going to become more disabled, end up in a wheelchair, all of that. So your brain just likes messing with that and going around and around and around because there's no obvious solution to it. So what's your mind going to do except just worry away at it? So you label your worry thoughts, you let go of the worry, you accept and observe thoughts and feelings, you're mindful of the present moment, what's going on in your body as this spin cycle goes around, proceed in the right direction. You can start seeing a pattern in these exercises. Wish I had time to actually run by these exercises in this webinar with you. They're kind of fun, but maybe you'll have to get the book and maybe I'll get a commission. All right, next slide is Act on Life, Not on Anger. I love the title of this. It's all about anger. And the idea is, again, trying to control anger, just like trying to control pain all the time, is like a Chinese finger trap, and that looks like a person who's not having any fun. Maybe they're, in fact, experiencing roller coaster emotions right there. So I like a lot of the suggestions in this little book, which applies acceptance and commitment therapy principles to anger. And on the next slide, they have one of many little gems in this book called Softening into Your Pain. Highly recommended. Would love to do it with you now, but no time. But it's there for you, and lots of other exercises where that comes from. Softening into your pain is just going to have you, instead of running from your pain, starting to allow yourself to be curious about it, notice it in different ways, so that you don't feel like you're enslaved to that pain, like it is the roller coaster and you're hanging on for dear life, like in my slide a while ago. But instead, developing a relationship with that pain that allows you to experience and perceive it in ways that are more helpful and end up something more functional, as opposed to this is big, huge threat, it's a big, huge, scary monster, and you better run like hell. On the next slide, I have some parting thoughts. I put up Calming the Rush of Panic, by the way, there again, because at the end, Bob Stahl gives a loving kindness exercise, which I absolutely adore. And I've had experiences of loving kindness that really changed my life. It's from the Buddhist metta tradition, and highly recommended. All in keeping with the literature and very practical stuff on loving kindness versus self-criticism, loving kindness and self-compassion versus beating yourself up, that sort of thing. Look at me, I can't even control my own emotions, what a basket case I am, all of that. Well, loving kindness is a whole different way of helping that body of yours, which is putting out all this pain output, and is highly unpleasant and difficult, to feel different about you in the midst of all that. That's important. So my parting thoughts are this before we have some questions. Emotions are meant to be helpful. That's right. Sometimes it's hard to believe when you're on a roller coaster of emotions, but they're meant to be helpful. They're like a message in a bottle. They pop up from the rim of our awareness or deep in our unconscious, and usually there's a very short message. Emotions aren't necessarily, the primary emotions anyhow, are not complicated in my work with them, both personally when I have therapy or with others that I'm working with. They usually have just very short messages that have an action tendency that is congruent with what that measure is. So that message is. So they're meant to be helpful, and I really invite you to listen to them so that they won't keep yelling at you. So the next thing I said was emotions won't yell if you listen the first time. It's kind of true. It kind of reminds me of when my kids were young, and if I wasn't listening, they would find a way of getting me to listen by upping the volume. Next one is, if you're depressed, beware of cognitive distortion. So when you're listening to yourself, your pain, other emotions, other thoughts especially that you're having, discernment's important, and it can be, especially when depression can cloud these things, and it's helpful to have another person who's skilled at this, like a cognitive behavioral therapist, which is actually a shameless plug for folk like me. Know your medication side effects. I have lots of people that come to me for help and they have runaway emotions, and in about 3 or 4 weeks, they go away, and they wonder what happened. It's because they went on a medication which is giving them a lot of side effects, but once they work through the side effects, that medication may in fact help them. What I've usually found with medication is that it tends to take the edge off the emotion. In other words, slow the emotional roller coaster down. Just makes it more tolerable on a good day to have you do the things without medication that you are learning to do and are wise to do that are going to help you with those emotions and with that pain. And finally, consider sleep restriction to get into slow wave sleep longer. I had the good fortune of, luckily, chancing on Dr. Jonathan Fleming at UBC Hospital, who was the director of the Sleep Disorders Clinic back in the day, and I learned to love the science of sleep, and I use it all the time. And one of the things I think that really helps with emotions is if you can get a better sleep. Of course, how are you going to do that with all the pain? There are some ways of helping with that, which are a combination of medication and something called cognitive behavioral therapy / insomnia. Cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. One of the techniques of which is sleep restriction, which gets you to sleep within certain periods so that you're driven when you go to sleep into the deepest part of sleep quickly, especially at the beginning of sleep, and last longer there, which is very refreshing and helpful both in terms of pain, sleep, and mood, emotional experiences for the next day and so forth. All right. That's it, Tanya. Time for questions. Next slide.
All right. Thank you very much. Those are some super practical tools that I think oftentimes that's what people are looking for the most. Like, information is super helpful, but it's always nice to just have super practical, tangible things that can help. And so thank you very much for those.
Oh, you're welcome.
Let's see. Some questions. Someone wondering if you come across clients who find that reading about pain triggers or causes an overfocus on pain.
Yeah, it's a great question, isn't it? I certainly say it can. So I'm going to make a distinction here between, as my dad says, you can have too much of a good thing. So if you're reading obsessively about pain, then that's just one more way of becoming pain-focused. And pain is already so good at helping you to pay attention to your pain experience. Doesn't need any help from overdoing it on the pain reading. On the other hand, I think that learning tools empowers you to learn and understand yourself, which will lead hopefully to a sense of greater compassion for yourself. It's a huge field, this whole thing of pain. It's one of those areas that we're not going to figure out anytime soon. And so therefore, knowing a few practical tools, reading something about pain can be really helpful, but not like living in pain books obsessively, I don't think is going to be the kind of thing that's helpful. But I bet you the caller, the person who asked the question already knew that. So there you have it.
All right, and then there's a couple of questions asking about the sleep restriction. Either if you can provide an example of it, or if you would be willing to provide some resources around that.
Yes. Well, the person to look up is Colleen Carney. And she's a researcher from McMaster, came and did a workshop here. But given that I've had sort of this sleep interest, I've known about this for quite some time, but I thought she was really good at it. Has some really good workbooks out there about how to use state-of-the-science sleep strategies to help you get a better night's rest. And the sleep restriction idea is that you set a time in the morning when you're going to wake up, come hell or high water. You may need to have someone phone you. You may need to, resort to all sorts of fiendish ideas to help you get up out of bed and into the shower, or doing something that's on your feet, maybe pausing by the side of your bed, stretching, doing whatever you need to do as a person who has pain, but definitely getting up, not staying in bed. And then refraining from any more than a 20, 30-minute nap during the day, and then going to bed when you can't keep your head up, and trying to refrain from going to bed when you're kind of sleepy. Wait until you're really, really dopey. And it's best to do this with somebody who knows what they're doing, maybe your family physician, a sleep specialist, psychologist who works in this area all the time. But the idea is to push the sleep, especially first sleep cycle, to get into that deep, slow wave sleep, delta sleep, for as long and as deeply as you can. Over the course of the next cycles, you tend to have less depth in your sleep, just normally speaking, and shorter. But it's really a great way to, and also very difficult, to get down there even when you have pain. And I work with people who have pain all the time, and I know that you can do this, but you have to set it up very carefully. But there's nothing like getting a better sleep for pain and for how you're feeling, roller coaster emotions, and even having repeated sleeping that is of a better quality.
Thank you very much again, Dr. Book, for your wonderful presentation. It was really great.
You're very welcome, and thanks, Tanya, for rolling with the punches here. You and I have been rolling through stuff that we didn't expect, and I really appreciate your help with all that. So kudos to you.
Absolutely, and thank you as well for rolling with the punches.